Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 29, verse 44. Gunabhimanino deva sargadeshvasya yad bhayat vartante nuyugam yesham pashayeta characharam. Gunabhimanino deva sargadeshvasya yad bhayat vartante nuyugam yesham pashayeta characharam. Honorary Prabhu.
Gunabhimanino deva sargadishvasya yad bhayat vartante nuyugam yesham vasayeta characharam.
Sargadeshvasya yad bhayat vartante nuyugam yesham bhajayeta characharam. Gunabhimano deva sargadeshvasya yad bhayat vartante nuyugam yesham bhajayeta characharam. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the directing demigods in charge of the modes of material nature carry out the functions of creation, maintenance, and destruction. Everything inanimate, animate, and inanimate within this material world is under their control. Purport. The three moods of material nature, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance, are under the control of the three deities, Brahma, Vishnu, and Lord Shiva. Lord Vishnu is in charge of the mode of goodness, Lord Brahma is in the charge of mode of passion, and Lord Shiva is in the charge of mode of ignorance. Similarly, there are many other demigods in charge of the air department, the water department, the cloud department, etc. Just as the government has many different departments. So within this material world, the government of the Supreme Lord has many departments, and all these departments function in proper order out of fear of the universe. But above them, the Supreme Controller is the personality of Godhead. Therefore, in the Brahma Samhita, it is said, Ishvaraha Parama Krishna. Undoubtedly, there are many controllers in the departmental management of this universe, but the Supreme Controller is Krishna. There are two kinds of dissolutions. One kind of dissolution takes place when Brahma goes to sleep during his night, and the final dissolution takes place when Brahma dies. As long as the Brahma does not die, creation, maintenance, and destruction are actuated by different demigods under the superintendence of the Supreme Lord. So this morning's lecture is, we read this verse, but it's going to be on Madhvacharya and Thathavada. But I'll just add one point here about the two kinds of dissolutions. The one that takes place during Brahma's night, where the lower planetary systems are all dissolved. That appears in the 32nd chapter in the same canto, 3.32. And at the end of Brahma's life, there is entire universe is destroyed. And both this will appear in the 32nd chapter. So just one point I just wanted to make there. So as we do this seminar on Tattvavada or Dvaita, the first 20 minutes, I'm going to talk about the pastimes of Madhvacharya, which will give us the premise for understanding the Tattvavada. Madhvacharya or Madhva is in our Sampradaya Acharya in the Brahma, Madhva, Gaudiya, Vaishnava Sampradaya. So he's one of our forefather spiritual masters. But there is a variation in the philosophy. The philosophy is popularly called as Dvaita or dualism, but technically it is called as Tattvavada. Madhvacharya appeared in the present state of Karnataka, but it was in the 1200s, AD. His father's name was Madhyage Bhatta, and mother's name was Vedavati. They had one daughter and two sons who died early. The father, he worshipped intensely to the deity in the town of Udupi. The name of the deity is Lord Ananteshwara. At that time, there were serious misinterpretations of the scriptures because the Mayavada philosophy was highly prevalent at that time, even though Vishishtadvaita through Ramanujacharya was established in many places, but still there were the predominant philosophy at that time was the Mayavada. And so he wanted a son who would declare around the world the supremacy of God based on scriptures. And there were different schools of philosophies. They were all producing confusion. And he wanted a son who would provide clarity to the Vedanta Sutra. And here is the picture of Lord Ananteshwara in Udupi. So after 12 long years of devotional service to Lord Ananteshwara in Udupi, on the Vijayadashami of 1238 AD, Mukhya Prana, who is Vayu, the wind god, who is here, Mukhya Prana comes as life air, who enters the body of this born child, okay, the newborn child, taking the place of the Jiva soul. So the Jiva soul exchanged in with the Mukhya Prana, who is the life air, and the child's name was Vasudeva, with hope that the child would become a great devotee of Lord Vasudeva, the God of the universe. This here, the top is the picture of Lord Ananteshwara in Udupi, and bottom is the current temple complex. Madhvacharya as a child had great powers. So, for instance, some of the things I have put here, one was he had extraordinary digestive powers, which is there in all this is taken from his biography called Sumantra Vijaya. And this, for example, the child ate baked gram, which was meant for the bull. Only the bull could digest it. But when the mother stepped out of the house, the child didn't have food. And so the child ate that which was meant for the bull and completely digested it. And the child's mother was very amazed at the child's digestive powers. The child had very high endurance. When the child was 1 year old, he went catching the tip of the tail of a bull to the field with the whole day with no fatigue. So two kinds of powers that we see here. One was in terms of eating and one in terms of physical strength. We will soon see the reason why these characteristics were there in that child. After a few years, there was a family wedding, and they all went to a nearby town. But the child just suddenly left the place and went to the temple of Lord Narayana. And then the child on its own went to another temple of Lord Chandra Mauleshwara, and then again to Ananteshwara to offer prayers. And then the parents were wondering where the child was, but the child had already traveled through all these temples and already arrived home. Here is a depiction of Madhvacharya. So Madhvacharya's education began. He started with Sanskrit alphabet lessons on an auspicious day, and the child said his father himself became the teacher of the child and started teaching slow after Sanskrit alphabets certain further lessons. And then he asked the child to repeat the previous lessons, but the child said it was not necessary because he has already mastered the whole subject. And then when the father questioned, the child was able to repeat the whole subject matter without any further education. And then the child had the first debate with one Shiva Bhatta, and who disagreed with Madhvacharya. The child was only about 7 years old at the time, and Madhvacharya became victorious in that debate. This was the first debate of Madhvacharya. And at age 8, the child exhibited, Madhvacharya is a yogi, and he exhibited many yogic powers. Once he went to near a hillock, and then it's a small hill and it is called as Durga Petha. And then he jumped from the hill and then landed on somebody's house. And in this way, the child exhibited various such features of physical strength and digestive powers. Once he made a dry plant sprout, and then he got Brahmin initiation at the age of 8, as was the custom. And this is a depiction of the child learning from his father. Madhvacharya was involved in many school activities. He was extremely profound in some of the sport activities, especially running race, high jump, long jump, swimming, wrestling. And then once he blew air into the sick friend's ear and cured him of chronic headache. And then he started, in just his early teenage, he started giving translations to the Upanishads that were not available at that time. So there are about 1,048 Upanishads, of which 108 are available now, and of which only 10 were considered as the great Upanishads by the first Shankaracharya, called Adi Shankaracharya. But then Madhvacharya started taking the other Upanishads that were there beyond this principle 10 and started writing translations for them as well. But among the 10, he started teaching his teacher the secret meaning of an Upanishad called as Aitareya Upanishad. And then he accepted a guru and called as Achyuta Preksha was the name of the guru. And this Achyuta Preksha was trained in Shankaracharya's philosophy of Kevala Advaita, which is concomitant with Mayavada. And the boy then was already very profound in the Upanishads, the Vedanta Sutra, and went and asked the teacher for sannyasa. And but then the teacher said to go and ask permission from his parents. And when he came back to his parents, he started debating with his parents, but the parents said it is very hurtful for Madhvacharya to come and ask for sannyasa like this. It is the responsibility of a son to take care of their elder parents, and he should just not go away like this. The child then compromised. And then he said that until he would stay with the parents until their next son is born. And then afterwards, the next son was born. And then in his teenage, he did take sannyasa and from his teacher called as Achyuta Preksha. And he got a new name now called as Purna Prajna. But he will be popularly called as Madhva. He had another name for Purna Prajna, which is called as Ananda Tirtha. But then he's popularly called as Madhva. And then at the age of 12, his teacher wanted to go to river Ganga to take ablutions. But then the Madhvacharya could not separate from his teacher. And he said he will bring the river Ganga to Udupi. Even now it happens once in 12 years. Suddenly the water appears in that kund. Now, after Madhvacharya becomes Ananda Tirtha, so this is a picture of him as a sannyasi. And his teacher asked him to study a book in the Shankara school called as Ishta Siddhi. It's a renowned work in the Shankara school to understand the Kevala Advaita plus Mayavada. It's together. But in the very first paragraph, Madhvacharya found 32 defects in that book. And the teacher was very upset. And and then he said, I cannot really teach you because you're not doing this properly. Madhvacharya said it's okay. The teacher left, but then Madhvacharya took over the class and he started teaching. And then immediately the teacher said that there is at that time, Madhvacharya, there was some discrepancy in the Srimad Bhagavatam text. There were a couple of malicious versions were going, but the Madhvacharya immediately told his teacher that pointed to one version of the Bhagavatam and said that is the correct version. And then his teacher asked how, and the Madhvacharya just went to repeat Canto 1, Chapter 5 of the Srimad Bhagavatam verbatim. And the teacher asked him, how does he remember that? And Madhvacharya said he remembered from his previous life. And then after this, Madhvacharya succeeded the throne of the teacher and was entitled as Ananda Tirtha or Madhva. The name comes from Rigveda. Now the teacher assigned him a new task, and the task was to find defects in Shankaracharya's philosophy of Kevaladvaita. That was the task given to him. So the teacher asked him to then also write a new commentary of the Vedanta Sutra and the Upanishads. After that, there was like in one of the festival days, there was a meal and there were 200 bananas offered to the Lord. And then Madhvacharya ate all 200 bananas after that as prasadam. He didn't have any, he didn't even take a break. And then he visited South India. And there in Karnataka, there is a mutt of Shankaracharya called as Sringeri, where he engaged in debate with the head monk there called as Vidya Shankara. And he told them that majority of the verses in the Vedas do not support their philosophy. And then he went to Kanyakumari and stayed there for 4 months. And after he came back, he was not quite satisfied with the explanations of the Vedanta Sutra that were available at that point. And then he also visited Srirangam temple and then River Payaswini, where he gave 100 meanings to the first word of the Vishnu Sahasranama called as Vishwa, because it starts Vishwam, Vishnu, Ruvashatkaraha, Bhuta Bhavya Bhavat Prabhu. So the first word Vishwa, he gave 100 meanings to that. And then he defeated the Kerala Brahmins who were present there, who had a grammatical mistake in the Rig Veda. Then he said he's going to take a tour to the Badri. And there he started writing a commentary for the Bhagavad Gita. And then he decided he will go to the higher Badri to meet in person sage Vedavyas. So he went there alone. He asked all his students to wait in the lower Badri, which is the current day Badrinath temple. And there is a lot, that is the Badri Narayan temple. He asked them to wait there. And then one of his students started following Madhvacharya, but then he couldn't keep up with Madhvacharya. And Madhvacharya was suddenly jumping through mountains and suddenly flying from one mountain to another mountain. And then he told the student to just go back. Madhvacharya, by his mystic powers, just transported the student back to the lower Badri. And then he went to the higher Badri. And this is the picture of Madhvacharya learning directly from sage Vedavyasa. This is the reason why our Guru Parampara states Narada, sage Narada, after Narada, Vyasa, and then directly Madhvacharya. Because it bypasses all the various things in Dwapar Yuga and the early Kali. And here is how our Guru Parampara is established. Per Sri Baladeva Vidyabhusha. So Sri Vyasadeva then disclosed the higher, this tree is still there in Badrinath right now. And he depicts the highest philosophy of Vedanta to Madhvacharya. And then Madhvacharya took leave from sage Vedavyasa. And then his next meeting was with Naranarayana Rishi. And then he met with them. And then he suddenly remembered all the expansions of the Lord. And then he started narrating one by one all the expansions of the Lord to Naranarayana Rishi. And then after taking blessings from Lord Narayana, he returned then back to lower Badri. And then he took his disciples and then went to the present day Andhra Pradesh to river Godavari. There he made his first trained disciple called Shobhana Bhatta. This Shobhana Bhatta, then he initiated him and gave him the name Padmanabha Tirtha. And then he gave another disciple, by the river Godavari. His name was Sama Shastri, and he gave him the name Narahari Tirtha. And then he returned back to Udupi and he started writing the commentary of Vedanta Sutra, which is called as Anubhashya. And the Sampradaya was then established, and all the disciples were given the metallic emblem of conch shell and disc on their two arms upon initiation. And then at that time, there was in the sea, there was a storm, and at that time, there was like a huge log available in the sea, and Madhvacharya used his upper cloth to control the storm, and then the boatman, then he gave two huge pieces of gopi chandan. But then Madhvacharya, by his yogic insight, he knew that they were actually two deities. One is of Krishna and the other is of Balarama. And as he touched the deity of Krishna, the deity became heavy and heavy, but Madhvacharya lifted it. The Balarama deity is now installed in a town called as Odabandheshwara in Karnataka. And Krishna was installed in Udupi. And here is the picture of Krishna who was taken by Madhvacharya. And to the right is a picture of the Udupi Sri Krishna, a picture drawn by someone. And Madhvacharya has performed many, many fantastic deeds, which are recorded in his biography called the Sumadhva Vijaya. Once he went, spoke to a Mohammedan king in the Persian language, even though he didn't know it. And he crossed the river by just walking on top of the river with his disciples. And then once he made his robbers fight with each other when they were when they attacked, sorry for the spelling mistake here, when they attacked his disciples. And then he wrestled with another set of robbers. And then a tiger, when was attacking the disciples as they were moving to a forest, Madhvacharya just pushed the tiger with force at a certain distance and started moving. And then he wrote the commentary, the most authoritative commentary for Mahabharata, which is available to date, called as Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnaya. It always starts with the Ramayana first, called as Ramayana Tatparya Nirnaya, and then proceeds with Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnaya. And then he said, why did he just get it there validated by Vyasadeva himself? And then he again went to Badrinath and then went to Higher Badri and got his approval directly for the Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnaya, and then came back. And as he was coming back, he crossed a river without getting his cloth wet. And then he fought. Once he went to Kashi, and there were many pandits there. And then he told his disciples, let's start engaging in a wrestling match with me. And all his disciples on one side, Madhvacharya on the other side, he wrestled and put down all his disciples together. They couldn't fight with Madhvacharya. The pujari there was a Shiva temple there in Kashi who invited Madhvacharya. And then after a dream, and Madhvacharya accepted that prasadam from that pujari. And then there was a king called as Ishupatak in a place called as Ishupatak Kshetra. And Madhvacharya just ate 1,000 bananas in a single stretch offered to the as prasadam. In another place called as Go Vishaya, he stimulated the trees to give flowers, and then he initiated a king called as Jayasimha into the Vaishnava Sampradaya. And then he gave initiations. His own brother came back, and then he gave him sannyasa, and his brother got initiated and got her name as Vishnu Tirtha. And then this Vishnu Tirtha then initiated another saint called as Vyasa Tirtha, who appears again in our Sampradaya lineage. And then also another student called as Aniruddha Tirtha. And then Madhvacharya established 8 mutts around the Krishna temple in Udupi. They're all centered around this Udupi Sri Krishna temple. Once he went and he was giving a lecture by the beach in the near Mangalore. The sea waves were constantly disturbing his lecture on Aitareya Upanishad. Madhvacharya did not like it. And so he just quelled the sound of the sea so that he can give his lecture without disturbance. And then he wrote a book called as Krishnamrita Maharnava. And then he revived a dead bull by composing 12 verses on expansions of Krishna, 12 expansions called as Dwadasha Stotra. And this is my last slide of the pastimes of Madhvacharya. And Madhvacharya, once when he was praying inside the deity of, he was doing puja, at that time, one of his students was peeked through the window to see what is Madhvacharya doing with the deity for this long. At that time, he was stunned to see that there were three people inside, not just Madhvacharya. Madhvacharya was there, and here was Bhim, and here was Hanuman. Because he was Vayu, he appears as Bhim, Hanuman, and Madhvacharya in Kali. In the Dwapar, he appeared as Bhim, and in Treta Yuga, the 24th cycle, he appeared as Hanuman, and eternally he was Mukhya Prana as the life air. So even now, and Madhvacharya identifies himself in his commentaries, in his Mahabharata Tattparya, that he himself is Bhim and Hanuman. So this gives the reason why he is able to eat 1,000 bananas and engage in wrestling match. And he was so physical. And some of the times he went when the Mayavaris were very were kept on going with something. Sometimes he even used wrestling to contain them. And then he composed shlokas on Narasimha called as Nakhastuti. And then in 1317, on the Shuddha Navami, when he was reciting the Aitareya Upanishad, there were heaps of flowers that fell from the sky, and Madhvacharya suddenly disappeared. There was just all there was just a full set of flowers. And so now let's go on to the philosophy of Madhvacharya. There are three things we are going to learn here. One is God. Second is living soul. And the third one is Jiva soul. And the third is matter. Madhvacharya states that this God is what is termed as Brahman in the scriptures. And this God is knowable, but he cannot be fully known. And he gives an example. I've taken this from his own Bhashya of the Vedanta Sutra, 1.1.5. I'm going to take this example, Meru Rupam Vipakshitaha. That means Mount Meru is so huge, only the very wise are able to see Mount Meru. We are not able to see from with our eyes. But when the very wise, when they see Mount Meru, they can see a portion of it, but they cannot see the whole Mount Meru because it is so big. Same way, God is knowable, okay, like Mount Meru, the wise are able to see, but they cannot know all of it. So this is the first point here about God. Brahman is God, according to Madhvacharya. Let us contrast this with Shankaracharya, where Brahman is the individual spirit, okay, which is just one spirit, that is Brahman. Madhvacharya, the God is Brahman. And this God is the efficient cause of this universe. This is point 2. But he's not the material cause. He's not material. For that, he has the various devas, the various devatas. They are the material cause. But the God is the efficient, transcendental cause. And what is the proof? Madhvacharya states this in his Dwadasha Stotra, that somebody, let's say that somebody gets sick. They will say, why did they get sick? Oh, maybe because it is of their karma. They did some bad activities in previous life, and because of that, they are suffering. And somebody else will say, oh, there is no suffering at all. It's all illusion. Somebody will say, oh, he did some mistake. Because of some mistake, that person is suffering. Somebody else will say, oh, time is the reason for the suffering. After some time changes, today you're going through bad period of time. There is so that is because tomorrow the time will change and then you will have better situation. And then somebody will say it is because of the modes of material nature. The modes of material nature is the cause, and that is another thing. Somebody else will say it is the planetary systems, the different planets, they are doing different things, and it'll. So somebody else will say it is just matter, chemical reactions of the body that is making one do. But Madhvacharya says that all these by themselves are not capable of inflicting any suffering. Okay, and therefore there has to be some ultimate cause for all these things. And then the example here he says is, okay, that he quotes in his commentary for this, Janma Dhyasya Yadaha. This is Vedanta Brahma Sutra 1.1.1. He says that when a potter is making a pot, the potter is the efficient cause, but the clay is the one that is molding and becoming into the pot, right? So clay is the material cause and potter is the efficient cause. So this is the analogy between God, who is Brahman, and the various devatas. And then Madhvacharya goes further on to say that this Brahman or God is the savior. He's not some individual entity, he's the savior. It is only if God is pleased, liberation can be obtained. And this God is termed as Supreme Narayana, who is non-different from all his expansions, who should be meditated upon for liberation. And he gives a process in his Bhashya that intense love of God with full knowledge and realization of his greatness and superiority will offer moksha, which will be followed by Lord Narayana's grace. So what are all the requirements? You need to have intense devotion. Knowledge should be complete. That means those in Vaikuntha cannot be people who have incomplete knowledge. Their knowledge has to be complete. Knowledge has to be complete, and they have to accept the superiority of the Lord. And then, by the grace of Lord Narayana, they will get, just this alone is not enough. You cannot just say, I got all knowledge, and then now I'm ready to go to Vaikuntha. But there has to be divine grace. Without it, Krishna does not want you to go, you cannot go, no matter what knowledge you have. And then, and then the second step here is intense devotion to one's Guru. That will help. And reverence to saintly people. Vancha kalpadrubhyascha kripasindrubhyevacha. To the Vaishnavas, you have to have reverence and doing one's duty. This is one distinct thing in Madhva's Sampradaya, that they very meticulously observe their occupation duty. And then, this is one last thing I will say about Brahman, and then I'll move on. That there are some attributes of Brahman, and he calls this is a very peculiar thing in the Madhvas, some thing called as Swa Vishesha. So this means that the attributes of the God are not separate from God. But it is some kind of an identity in difference. It is something like, let's say that God has a club, a conch shell, a disc, and so on. Is the disc same as the God? Yes, but it is somewhat different. So, but it is essentially the same as God, but it's somewhat different. This is called Swa Vishesha. It is not different, but it is him, kind of a thing. So God has a spiritual form, and he used all these instruments for his activity. So that means the various attributes of Brahman, like Brahman is a person. The person, what is Brahman? The supreme personality of Godhead is Brahman per Madhva. And he has various features. If he's blue in color, he has the Kaustuba gem, he has the Vaijayanti garland. All these are his attributes, which are identical with him, but there is somewhat a difference, but it is still identical with him. So he called this as Swa Vishesha, intrinsic attributes of the Brahman. Now, he goes on by asking questions to the Mayavadis. The next few slides, how he expands his philosophy is by asking them, the Shankaracharya's followers, questions. The first question here is, he's asking them, if the individual soul is Brahman, why should an unbound Brahman, who is all bliss and knowledge, be in this material world, suffering in material existence? So let's say, according to Shankaracharya, I am Brahman, this Prabhu is Brahman, that Prabhu is Brahman, everybody is Brahman. Madhvacharya is asking, if all of you are Brahman, why are you all here suffering? You're supposed to be that unbound Brahman who is all bliss and knowledge. This is question number one. Question two, he's asking them, if the individual soul is Brahman according to the Shankara's philosophy, why would they be of limited knowledge because of ignorance or avidya? Why is it that suddenly all knowledge disappeared and then they have to start learning all these things afresh? Third, he's saying, how can an omniscient Brahman knows everything, it's all knowledge, be an abode of ignorance? Because we are all suffering from ignorance and we are all suffering in this material world. Why is this Brahman like this? The Mayavadis responded to him saying there is no suffering at all because all that is illusion. You're just thinking it is suffering, but there is no real suffering at all. It is all because of illusion. Then Madhvacharya is giving counter response. Then if you are suffering because of illusion, then you have two things. You have illusion and then you have Brahman. So again, there is no Advaita or non-dualism because it is broken into illusion and suffering. And then the Advaitans, they say, no, there is actually no illusion also, because in a lower platform, you think that there is an illusion and Brahman is covered. But when you go to a higher platform, then called as, the lower platform is called Vyavaharika, the higher platform is called Paramarthika. In the higher platform, there is no illusion, nobody is suffering, there is no world. You realize that you are Brahman and you exist, right? That is what the Mayavadis say. Now let's see what Madhvacharya says to them again. Then he says, okay, if all souls are one and the same, then will I know the feelings of what is going on in this Prabhu's mind, that Prabhu's mind? So that means if all souls are one and the same Brahman, then one Jiva soul should know the pain and pleasure of what is going on in another Jiva soul, right? So he's asking the Shankaracharya's followers there. So tell me now, what is my feeling? If you do not know, then you are not same as me, right? And so, and then he also tells them that the Advaitin should stop preaching, because who will they preach to? Because you're preaching self, right? Because you yourself are Brahman. So if you preach to somebody else, then preaching should stop, right? Then he says that, okay, if there is something called preaching, then you have preaching and then you have Brahman. Again, it is split into two, right? You have Bheda. So he says, no need to preach. Then they say, no, you should accept a spiritual master. But then who's spiritual master? A spiritual master is also same as you. Then you are same as spiritual master. Who will the spiritual master preach to? The spiritual master has to preach to themselves, right? So Madhvacharya, in this way, he goes on trying to tell them that absolutely what they are saying is not possible. So then Madhvacharya says, who is then the living soul? If he is not Brahman, who is the living soul? So here he says there are two kinds of jivas, the jivas in Vaikuntha in the left panel, and then you have the jivas in the material world. So the jivas in the Vaikuntha, they are like, both of them are like reflected counterparts of God, except that in jivas in the material world, they are called in the Vaikuntha are unconditioned. In the material world, they are conditioned. The word Madhvacharya used for this, Pratibimba Amsa. Pratibimba Amsa means Amsa is an attribute. Bimba is like a reflection. Pratibimba Amsa, and what kind? Nirupahadika. Okay, these are unconditioned. So all the beings in the Vaikuntha, they are unconditioned counterparts, but those in the material world, they are conditioned. Why they are conditioned? Because they have a material body. But those in spiritual world, they have a spiritual body. They don't have a material body. So that is the difference. But both of them, they are not Brahman. So the jivas, and then the Prabhu. Go back. So so he says, like, if there is a mirror, and if somebody is standing in front of the mirror, the original person is Brahman, and something else is getting reflected in the mirror, that could be the individual soul. So it is like, and then immediately the Shankaracharya's followers told him, that is all fine, but now I'm going to come and take off the mirror. So now there is no reflection. All there is just Brahman, right? So now you can realize that you are Brahman. But Madhvacharya tells them, even in a reflection, the reflected one is not same as the original. Why? Because the reflected person appears in the opposite direction. Like, for example, if something is right to left in the original, the reflected appears left to right. So the reflected is still different from the original. He gives more example, like if there is a mountain and a reflection, a shadow, the shadow moves, but the mountain doesn't. The mountain is like Brahman, the shadow is like the individual soul. Like Kasturi gives good smell, okay, and fire burns, jaggery is sweet, but their reflections don't have any of these qualities. So if you take a fire, and then I put a mirror in front of the fire, and then here you can see the fire in the mirror, but that fire doesn't have any of those qualities as the original fire. In that way, he says that the Jiva soul is absolutely different from that of the fire, just as the reflected counterpart is in no way the same as that of the original Brahman, who is the Lord Narayana or Krishna. And then now he takes the different, Shankaracharya took four to six verses in the Upanishads and called them as Mahavakyas, or great phrases. And because they explain the philosophy of Advaita. And Madhvacharya is giving counter response why those translations are wrong. The first verse here I'm taking is Aham Brahmasmi. So this comes from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 1.4.10. Okay. The first thing Madhvacharya is saying is the way the Sanskrit verse they are compounded here is, it does not mean I am God. Okay. Aham Brahma Asmi. It does not mean that I am God. It just means that I belong to Brahman. That means I belong to God, or I'm dependent upon God. No matter how you take this, you have to see the context in which this is said. This verse, it is popularly attributed to a sage called as Yajnavalkya, this Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. But here God is speaking, and God is saying Aham Brahmasmi. So this is equivalent to in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says Aham Sarvasya Prabhu, I am the greatest of all. It means if Krishna is the greatest of all, it doesn't mean that everybody can come and say Aham, 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 and then say that I am the greatest of all, right? In the same way, God is saying that he is Brahman. That doesn't mean that living soul is Brahman, according to Madhvacharya. This is the first Mahavakya. The second Mahavakya is Tat Tvam Asi. And here, the simple meaning is you are in him, under his control and support. So Madhvacharya is splitting this verse Tat Tvam Asi as Tat Tasmin. That means from him, from the Lord, the individual soul is coming. The translation, he says, is wrong to say that you are that. That is not the translation, according to Madhvacharya. And again, he's saying the context. Even if that translation is true, we have to see the context. The context is this was addressed to a sage called as Shwetaketu in this Upanishad, who's a great sage, and he befits worship. Okay, so Madhvacharya is saying maybe Shwetaketu could be an expansion of the Lord. That doesn't mean that everybody is Shwetaketu and they are all Tattvamasi. Okay, so he says that learn the context before just randomly taking some phrases from somewhere and giving some translation. You cannot just suddenly take from somewhere Aham Brahmasmi and then everybody starts repeating Aham Brahmasmi. That was said by God. And here it was said to sage Shwetaketu. Are you Shwetaketu? You are not. So you are not Tattvamasi. That's what Madhvacharya is saying here. This is taken from Chandogya Upanishad 6.9.4. This is the next one in Chandogya Upanishad 3.14.1. Ekamed Dvitiyam Brahma. So this means that there is no second. Okay, so there is no two. There is only one. The Madhvacharya is saying this just means since God is Brahman, there is no two gods. There is no second to God. There is no one superior to God. This is the definition. This doesn't mean that there is no two living soul. It just means that there is no second to God or the personality of Godhead, Hari. The last phrase I'm taking here, Chandogya Upanishad 3.14.1, Sarvam Kalavidam Brahma. All there exists is Brahman. So here, since Brahman is God, all he's saying is God is present everywhere. Vishnu is present everywhere. It doesn't mean that the living soul is present everywhere. Okay, God is present everywhere. So this is the Thathavada, Dvaita explanation for these verses.
What is the explanation of Sarvam Kalavidam?
Brahman refers to the personality of Godhead, Vishnu. And according to Madhvacharya, and therefore, Vishnu is present everywhere. Sarvam Kalamidam Brahma. Brahma is Vishnu, Vishnu is present everywhere. That living soul is not Brahman in Madhvacharya. So it doesn't mean that individual living entity is present everywhere. So then comes the cause of the universe. We already spoke about this. The Lord is the efficient cause. I've just given the proof for that here in Mahanarayana Upanishad, where it says Vishwame Vedam Purushaha. This is the verse from which he's telling that the Lord is the ultimate cause of this universe, and the material cause, maybe the devatas, different devatas are material cause, but ultimately the Lord is the cause for all everything material. Here is a pictorial representation of the Thathavada philosophy. There are three substances here: individual souls, matter, God. Okay, God is Brahman, according to Thathavada. I would not confuse this with the Brahman in our philosophy. Our philosophy is, there is a distinct difference here between Madhvacharya's Dvaita and our Brahman. And our Brahman is, the definition is quite different. So our philosophy also, the Brahman means God, but it also refers to the impersonal Brahman at the same time. So there is a difference between Achintya Bheda Veda and Tattvavada here. So let's say this soul is me. This soul, let's say, is this Prabhu. This soul is that Prabhu. Okay. So Madhvacharya's first point here is one soul is not same as another soul. This is the first difference. That means one living entity is not same as another living entity in either the material perspective or the spiritual perspective. One soul might be so good in playing harmonium. Another soul may not be good in playing harmonium, but they may be good in singing. So that means these two souls are even materially different, even if they are not seeing something spiritual. That is the reason why somebody is rich, somebody is poor, because intrinsically souls are different from the material perspective. And he says that even from a spiritual perspective, souls are different. That is, one spiritual soul can never be same as another, even in the spiritual liberated platform. That means even in Vaikuntha, one soul cannot go become the gopis, or one soul cannot go become a particular Lakshmi Devi or something like that. So it means that the differences are eternal in the material world and it persists in the spiritual world. This is point number one. Point number two, different matters, they're also different. That means this chair is different from the table is different from the wall, and there is absolute difference even among matter. Okay, and the matter exists in reality, it exists, and they're all different. Third difference, every soul is different from Brahman or God, called as Narayana, Krishna, Rama, Hari, it doesn't matter. They're all exactly the same. Who has their primary attributes called as Swa Vishesha that we did in the previous slide. Same way, matter is also different from God or Brahman. And the last difference is every soul is different from every kind of matter. So this is called as Pancha Bheda. And this is also cited for the Bheda aspects in our Dashamula thing by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He cites this as far as our Bheda's absolute difference in Achintya Bheda Veda is concerned. The same Bheda is cited there. And he also cites this in his Kalyana Kalpataru. That means, what are the 5 differences? Even if you don't remember anything else in today's thing, these 5 things, if you remember, that means there is a take-home message of Tattvavada. Okay? One soul is different from another soul. Bheda 1. One matter is different from another matter. Bheda 2. Soul different from God or Brahman, Bheda 3. Matter different from Brahman, that Bheda 4. And 5th Bheda, soul different from matter. This is called Pancha Bheda. So this is pretty much the take-home message for today's session. So this is called as absolute difference. Only Bheda, no Abheda. Okay, absolute Bheda. So, and Madhvacharya says that he accepts all forms of getting knowledge, including Pratyaksha, Anumana. Everything is fine as long as it doesn't contradict Shabda, the revealed knowledge as given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As long as it doesn't contradict this, and then it is fine. And then he says that there is a reality of this world. The world has been created for real. It is not some Maya thing that doesn't exist and all. It is there for real. That there is diversity of creation. In fact, it is a beautiful game of the Lord that all this world is there. And it is a field of spiritual development for the conditioned soul. Conditioned souls can come here and learn and correct themselves and behave. Then that is the reason why this material world is there. and he is immanent. He's there in all the world, immanent as Paramatma, and he's also there without and there is concrete evidence for creation in his Dwadasha Shodra, that there is absolute creation of the real world. And then he says that there is heterogeneity within this material world. That means that there are places where there is more difficult conditions, like the hellish planets. There are places where there are better conditions, like in heaven, and mixed places like this earthly planetary systems. So there is heterogeneity, that no one place can be same as another place. So there is Bheda everywhere. So this philosophy, this is my last but one slide, I think. This philosophy is called as philosophy of gradation. That means there is absolute gradation in the material world and the spiritual world. That means even in this material world, there is a hierarchy. There are people who may be poor, they may be people who are rich, they may be people who have less knowledge, they have people who have more knowledge. So there is a gradation everywhere. And there is a hierarchy of the gods. And he has given that hierarchy in the Mahabharata Tattparya Nirnaya to say that the first living entity for him is Mahalakshmi. And from Mahalakshmi, what distance, next step, if you go down, the next living entity comes, okay, would be, let's say, Vayu or Brahma. And then from there, you go how much distance you go down, you get Lord Shiva. Then you go how much distance you get the next living. So there is a big gradation among gods, according to this. And then there is a hierarchy among rishis. There are some rishis who are superior to the others. Maybe Sage Narada is superior to the most rishis, like that. So he has a hierarchy of rishis. There is a hierarchy among the human species. Out of 400,000 human species, there are different species. There is a hierarchy. There is a hierarchy among animal species. There is a hierarchy among the demons. Some demons are better than the others. There is a hierarchy among all kinds of souls, giving the demigods control over the humans. So the only place where there is no hierarchy is among Vishnu. The different Vishnu Tattva, there is no hierarchy. In fact, they find it blasphemous to say that there is some difference between Rama, Vishnu, Krishna, and so on. So except for that one place, everywhere else there is hierarchy. And those hierarchy will persist in the spiritual world. That means some soul cannot come and say, I have become realized, now I can eat 1,000 bananas, now I'm going to go become Hanuman. There is only one Hanuman, and you cannot go and replace that Hanuman, according to Madhvacharya. So that means that there is categorization of souls. That means there are some souls who predominantly function in the mode of goodness, some souls who predominantly function in the mode of passion, and those who function in the mode of ignorance. That means those who function in the mode of goodness will go to heaven. They are already destined to go to heaven. And those who function in the mode of passion, they will stay in this material universe, this earthly planetary systems forever. And then those who function in the mode of ignorance, they maybe not in this lifetime, but in one of the future lifetimes, they are destined to go to hell. Okay, this is called as the philosophy of damnation. That means they are damned to go to hell. They don't have a choice because they are not going to improve. Okay, they are not going to improve. They are going to be in the mode of ignorance, and they are verily in the path towards hellish existence. So, because two souls are different, that means if one soul is less capable of going towards God, how would they be able to go? Right? So that means they are destined towards. So there are differences, okay, but I would not compare this with our Achinte Veda, okay? There are distinct differences here, but as far as Veda, but for some practical purpose, you can see that this is also true when you take because some souls, no matter what good you tell them, they won't take it, right? That means, so for all practical purposes, the Veda part of this is all true. Madhvacharya cannot be wrong. Madhvacharya is Vayu Hanuman, but he only spoke about the Veda part. According to the Veda part, no matter some souls, they are so much in the mode of goodness that no matter what you bring and show them, they won't go to another path, right? So that's what Madhvacharya is focusing on the Veda. And there are gradations even among the liberated souls, okay? This is my last slide. This is taken from Madhvacharya's Vedanta Sutra, Anubhashya. First, the devotion and divine grace which precede the general understanding of the teachings about God is found in the scripture. So you need the divine grace. Without Krishna's grace, you cannot do anything. Second, the devotion and divine grace which follow critical study. He's Madhvacharya saying that we should study properly and understand the scriptures. And what you will find at the end of understanding is about the supremacy of God. The supremacy of Krishna you will find at the end in the scriptures. Vede, Ramayane, cha Purane, Bharate, Tatha, Adav, Madhye, cha Ante, cha Hari, Sarvatra, Gite. In the Vedas, Ramayana, Purana, Mahabharata, in the middle, beginning, end, everywhere Hari is being sung. Third, the devotion and divine grace following deep meditation on God's supreme majesty, leading to direct vision. Third step, you will get vision of God. You can see the personality of Godhead face to face. And then the last one, with the devotion and divine grace, follow after you get the divine experience of God, after you see the God face to face, with utmost warmth and love, such devotion and divine grace will bring about liberation. And in that devotion, in that state of liberation becomes spontaneous, and that devotion becomes an end itself. So these are the four steps Madhvacharya states in his Anubhashya. So this is my last slide. I'll do one more session. Prabhuji asked me to do it next Sunday, where I will do a pictorial comparison between Shankaracharya's Kevaladvaita, and then I created Venn diagram kind of a thing, and Ramanujacharya's Vishishtadvaita, Madhvacharya's Thathavada, and then Vallabhacharya's Shuddha Advaita, Achintya Bheda, and then I'll do tables for each attribute. What do these philosophies say and compare? So with that, I'll stop. Thank you. Prabhu?
Prabhuji, there are three processes of getting knowledge. We say direct praman. Prabhupada always quotes Ishopanishad, Anuman praman, Shabda praman. So as per Madhvacharya, if the conclusive truth is Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead, through Pratyaksha praman also, through Anuman also, then we have to accept. But Prabhupada throughout his classes, Koddewa, London, wherever he gave classes, he always says that there is no room for speculation. So how we can, what I wanted to understand, Madhvacharya is also in our disciplic succession. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu come with, I think the Veda. So is there time, place and circumstances, this little difference I'm saying today, little confused?
No, it's a very good question. Prabhu is saying that there is a difference here. Madhvacharya is saying here that take Pratyaksha, Anumana, any kinds. He gives 9 kinds actually. Pratyaksha, Anumana only the broad 2. And then Shabda, as long as it doesn't contradict Shabda. Jiva Goswami, we are following Jiva Goswami. Jiva Goswami in his Tattva Sandarbha has deleted both Pratyaksha and Anumana. He said they are not valid pramana. So we are taking exactly what Jiva Goswami says. And Jiva Goswami says that there is, if just take the Shabda as it is, the Shabda is saying that there is Bheda completely and there is Abheda absolutely. So take it both, and that is Achintya Bheda Bheda. So the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, we strictly take that. And Madhvacharya is stating this, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, based on what was followed at that time, he found that there were some offshoots in the way the followers, even though Madhvacharya is absolutely right, the followers did not, there were some differences in the way the followers. So in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Mahaprabhu says that there is only one thing he found in the whole thing, what the Tattvavadis at that time in Udupi were following to be correct. And that was to accept the form of Krishna as the absolute truth. So in a sense, you see that you will find that all what Madhvacharya preached, we do take it. Because Bhaktivinoda Thakur took it, but it was the Veda part. But the Abheda part equally exists absolutely as well. So that would be the time when the bifurcation happened, during the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he himself, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, did not accept that the things that were followed by the followers.
One small thing to
Yes, Prabhu.
At the beginning, you talk about Madhvacharya very nicely, entire life cycle, life period of Madhva. So it is very technical question. Sorry to ask Bhagavatam class,
Mm.
but you said that the Mukhya Prana enters the body of the baby.
Mm.
So how we can understand? Because in our own body, there is one Mukhya Prana, Jiva, and there are mycoplasm, bacteria, viruses. There are many thousands of Jiva. So how we can understand this? Because Madhvacharya Bhan means Madhvacharya, right? The soul. And so how we can...
It is, it's not talking about all the other organisms and all living in the body. The living entity who were the Jiva soul in that child's body, they exchanged. The Jiva soul left and then they exchanged. And then Vayu entered. Vayu, the personality of wind god or Mukhya Prana here, or Hanuman being, that soul entered and replaced the Jiva soul who was inside. Okay, bro.
I will have to discuss later.
Okay. Yes, man.
But yeah, question is that, I mean, as far as at least these things are concerned, if someone follows this, like the last one, I mean, go to the last one. So if someone follows these things, they will get direct experience. Once you get direct experience, means that you're pure, you're pure devotee. So then after you're pure devotee, that means how can you still say that there is no, I mean, there is only difference, there is no, not. I always say another thing. So, because how can the absolute truth be two? It can be one only. So that's my question. That if, I mean, as far as I understand, if anyone follows this process, they'll go back to God. For sure, right? There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing confusing.
Correct.
It's very clear.
Very clear. Very correct, Prabhu. Very
And
nice.
that's what we do too. I mean, we chant the Holy
Very
Name.
nice. Very nicely said.
So then once you attain that self-realization, Sri Krishna face to face, eye to eye. Then since Krishna is absolute truth and is full of knowledge, bliss, so then obviously you'll admit that there is both Veda and Abheda, right?
So even if there are two aspects to this. Actually, it's a very nice thing of what Prabhu mentioned here. The living souls, they're all of so much variety that they have a natural affiliation towards a certain thing, and that is why we accept all four sampradayas to be genuine. So if somebody is following Vishishtadvaita, Ramanujacharya, they also are going to attain in a certain way. Madhvacharya, they follow this, they will also attain in a certain way. The only problem where we have is with the Mayavada part of Kevaladvaita, because there is blasphemy there. Krishna Aparada, since there is offense there we have a problem there. So even there, Krishna is giving them Sayujya Mukti, impersonal liberation. Therefore, any of these processes will work. And at a certain stage, Krishna himself will give the complete knowledge. We don't have to go strive for it. Krishna will close the gap. If we have put that 15% effort, whatever, 5%, 4%, whatever it is, Krishna will close the gap and give us the required knowledge. And at that time, we are entirely in knowledge and so on. Our effort is only minuscule anyway. It is all because of the causeless mercy of the Lord. The knowledge gap, everything will be closed. So there, that thing will come. Even if they're following completely Bheda, it is okay. But that gap will be closed at that realization by Krishna in terms of the nature of the individual soul. The nature of the individual soul, see, for example, if you take the Bhagavad Gita verse, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma Nasochati Nakakshati Samasarveshu Bhuteshu Bhaktim Labhati Param. Let's take that verse. Okay, so what is Brahma Bhuta there? To understand, when the spiritual, according our translation for that, would be Brahma Bhuta. When the living entity Bhuta understands that he is Brahman, that he is in a spiritual platform, at that time devotional service will begin. Okay, very similar to the Atma Rama verse in the Bhagavatam, right? But what would Madhvacharya states there? When the Bhuta, the living entity, realizes Brahman, who is Krishna, then Nasochati Nakakshati. So that means it doesn't mean, according to Madhvacharya, it would not mean that living entity is realizing that he's spirit. It would mean that the living entity is realizing Brahman, who is Krishna, and not the living entity. So there is, because he's quoting exact Veda. There.
The
Prabhu.
second thing is a very practical question.
Mm.
So suppose you catch some Tattvavadi.
Mm.
How, I mean, I don't think they're really preaching properly. Are they preaching properly?
They are preaching the Veda part as it is.
Okay. So now, if we catch some Tattvavadi
Mm.
and we give him Bhagavad Gita,
Mm.
and he says that, well, I'm already following this.
Mm. Mm.
So then one mood would be like, okay, you follow it, you go.
Mm. Mm.
But my problem with that is that I mean, like, I don't know, apart from, of course, Gaudiya Vaishnavas, how clear they are preaching,
Mm.
they are helping their own followers.
Mm.
Like Mahaprabhu himself found defects in.
Mm. Mm.
So then, should we what should we do if we catch up Tattvavadi? He's a follower of Ramanuja, I mean,
Madhvacharya.
Madhvacharya, sorry.
Mm. Mm.
So then we say we're following Madhvacharya.
Mm.
Of course, we're different.
Mm.
But then, so should we leave him or should we go preach? What should we do?
So I have some question. I mean, such kind of discussion really happening to the common public, or they are discussing at a high level in conferences. So yeah, this is same question.
So, Prabhu, the way I see here with my limited knowledge is there is so much happiness involved in different aspects of Vaishnavism. Like, for example, when the Sri Vaishnavas, when they are worshipping the Lord, it is so pleasurable to even look at how they're giving pleasure to the Lord in terms of their service. And the same thing with Madhvacharya, the intense amount of effort they're putting in this Udupi temple for the worship of Krishna, it looks like, we can just share the common thing there of pleasing the Lord. They're all trying to do the same thing. And the difference is, unless you go to this some minor thing, there is actually no difference between all these different Vaishnava Sampradayas. It is just the perspective in which we look at it. Like when we are looking only at the perspective of Bheda, then that soul is driven towards these philosophy, the Thathavada, right? And because they are, if you can appreciate here, the amount of intense devotion Madhvacharya had for Krishna, that he didn't want to agree that any soul is part of Brahman at all. That he wanted to clearly establish Krishna is supreme, and there he is in a supreme place. Nobody can go and be in any platform equal to him under any circumstance ever. Right? So that itself will give us so much of a devotion for us to understand that there is a living being here who is steadfast in devotion, that every verse of the Upanishads and scripture can be translated with absolute difference as well. Right? So, yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, I agree that. I mean, I'm just saying, like, when it comes to practice, like, we have a practical sadhana. So the problem is, I feel that followers of different, they don't have a sadhana. And so they're not doing anything, even though they have a, so that.
I'll make a correction there, Prabhu, because they are doing sadhana. It is just that they are not doing Nama Kirtan as the prime. So, for example, Madhvacharya, they are very intense on pleasing the Lord through fire sacrifice. So every day, a pure Madhvacharya follower will do fire sacrifice through Vayu. They are pleasing Krishna. Just like how we are, the Sri Vaishnavas, they have a red line on their tilak here. The red line stands for Shri or Mahalakshmi. So through Mahalakshmi, they are pleasing Krishna. So it's called Shri Sampradaya. Madhvacharya's followers have a black line because they take the ashes from the fire every day. That is the fire god. Okay, so through the fire god, they are approaching Krishna. So Krishna is not worshipped directly. And what are we doing? We are having a Tulasi leaf here. Through Tulasi Devi, we are approaching Krishna. The followers of Vallabhacharya or Vishnu Swami there, they have a red U, which is the feet of Krishna, which is there. It represents the Govardhan hill, and then they have a red dot, which is the Yamuna river. So through the Yamuna river and the Govardhan hill, they are approaching Krishna. So in some way or the other, so they all have something like the Sri Vaishnavas are very adept in temple worship practices. So through various temple worship practices, they are approaching Krishna. And here, Madhvacharya, predominantly they're doing 5 seconds, but they're also doing Namakirtan. But it is not taken as prime. But the only problem there is those things are more difficult to do. Krishna Nama Sankirtan is much easier to do and has been the recommended process. So that is the reason why sometimes it is not able to, it is not easy to make more followers.
Yeah.
Because who will go every day make fire sacrifice in the morning at home and do, right? So those days they are not able to take that ashes and put the black line.
So thank you for correcting my ignorance. Last
Yeah,
thing, if
yeah.
you don't mind.
The discussion.
Yeah, last thing. What is it? Yeah. So the thing is that we can't see Krishna alone. Like Prabhupada says, it pains us to see Krishna alone. Krishna with Radharani, with Balram, Yashoda. So Udupi temple, you see Krishna alone. So that Krishna, is it Vatsalya mood or what?
So the Udupi Krishna, it is, let's see the picture here. He's like those who are interacting with the Gopas. That's how the picture is here. But but he is, but the more detailed part of this is not the only detail where there is Krishna alone. For example, if you the Gopala who was on top of the Govardhan hill when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu visited, he was also by himself. And then when he came back, and then they installed him as Srinath ji in Nath Tuhara. So he was there also, he was by himself.
I'm trying to clarify the rasa. What is the rasa that they?
The rasa here is according to the individual soul. For example, when I was 25 years ago, when I was talking with the Thathavada about this, he was not very happy with me in that occasion. And he asked me, I told him about, I was telling him about the gopis. And he said, is Prahlad's devotion any different from that of the gopi? That was his argument. And he was a senior Acharya. I was a very young boy. I didn't want to argue. I just simply listened and listened to what he had to say and came. So that means like the rasa is, there is no difference between them, because you can, in whatever form, but all the forms are eternal. All the forms are eternal, identical, and they're all there in Vaikuntha, different souls. They can worship, for example, Vyasaraya, I think he worshipped the form as Hayagriva. So different acharyas, they would worship Narsimha, Rama, so on, and it is all identical, and there is absolute no difference there alone. Everywhere else there is difference.
Thank you.
So,
Sorry for so many questions.
No, it's very nice. Thank you.
You made a wonderful point about, two jivas separate spiritually, materially also. So I heard one thing that, and you also mentioned this, that, Ichha Dvesha Samutvane Danga Mohina Bharata, that is the reason we came in this material world. So whatever position jiva has in spiritual world, that cannot be taken by any great soul also in spiritual world. That will remain vacant. जैसे बोलते हैं ना, company में, the one vacant position got created. One senior devotee was telling me. And once it is created, it get filled in company here in this world, but there it will not get filled unless we will go there. So is it true?
According to Achintya Veda. According to us, not according to Madhvacharya. According to Madhvacharya, the world has existed forever. The living material, even though we might see there is some creation, all these things, everything was eternally created, eternally existing, and we have all been existing eternally. And the living entity is taking the effort to go to the spiritual world, right? And so there is, in one sense, there is no creation, according to Thathavada. It might appear like the world is getting created and all, but in one sense, there is no creation, because everything has been, even matter has been existing eternally like this.
Means it is temporary, but
no, it is eternally existing in Thathavada. Madhvacharya. There is no temporary and all. It is eternal and real. Like I'll give you example, Prabhu. This is, let's say that this table is used for Krishna's service. What does Bhagavatam say? Per Achintya Beda Beda, this table is being converted from matter to spirit. Because all there exists is spirit. Sarvam Khalavedam Brahma, all there exists is spirit. Okay, so even though it has a spiritual form as a table, okay, but material eyes are seeing the material table, the spiritual eyes are seeing the spiritual table, right? But Madhvacharya is saying that is according to him, that is not thing. This is a material table per se, and it will always exist as matter.
So then there's no question of destruction then.
Even if it is destroyed, the shape is destroyed, and then a new shape will be formed. Like, for example, like you have transformation of material energy. You cannot transform material energy into spiritual energy, according to the government. Within material energy, there will be transformation.
But according to us, it's possible to transform.
According to us, yes, because there is no matter at all for us. In that sense, it forms, it is not really, it is somewhere in between. It is not, there is abheda, there is bheda, both exist simultaneously, because then the question comes is, how are we have arguments for everything. Jiva Goswami has given arguments for everything. Like if you take food offering, we are doing everyday food, and then you're giving it to Krishna. Why is Krishna accepting matter? That's the question. The Gaudiya Vaishnavas will ask. That means that the matter is converted to spirit. That is the argument. So I don't know what is their argument for that. But the matter is converted to spirit. Because Krishna does not accept, this is very clear in our Acharya's thing, that Krishna does not interact with matter. He does not, Krishna is entirely in the spiritual platform, and he does not interact with matter. So that is why we are calling it the bhog as the spiritual food that has already got converted to spirit. Whether we are able to see it or not is a different thing. So if by the proper devotion, we can convert that from matter to spirit. The trees are there, this building, everything is already part of Vaikuntha. But Madhvacharya says that is not the case, because he's focusing on pure Bheda. He's focusing on pure Bheda, so the matter exists eternally.
Same thing Prabhu says about the mic also, right? This is also spiritual.
Correct. The microphone is spirit. Everything, all that exists is spirit.
Spirit is eternal.
Spirit is eternal. The only difference there is that spirit, then you can see that as, so let's say that if you see the spirit as a conglomerate, homogeneous mass, it is abheda. But when you carefully see the various forms in it, you'll be able to see the bheda, where all those forms are subservient to the form of Krishna. There you'll be able to see it. And both the homogeneous mass and the variegatedness of the spiritual forms exist simultaneously. And that is what is so hard for people who are very, very inclined to take that God is absolutely different, and in no way God and us can be bridged. Okay, they will find it very hard to accept any aspect of the abheda. And those are already inclined to thinking that they themselves are spirit and there is nothing beyond it, then they will find it very hard to take the bheda, and they will not accept the form of Krishna as easily. Their heart won't melt at all for a long time, right? Unless by yes, Prabhu.
Madhvacharya mentioned that souls are different. So, what are the attributes that attract the soul to Krishna?
Okay, that is beyond the three modes. So what is attracting Krishna is beyond the three modes. So the three things that he said is those who are predominantly in the mode of ignorance are destined to go to hell. Those who are predominantly they will circulate in this passion, in this earthly planetary systems, and the other go to the higher planetary system. But in pure mode of goodness, they can go. But those in passion and ignorance and all is not easy for them. For all practical purpose, they cannot go back to Godhead. For all practical purpose, he doesn't even. But for us, anybody can go. Whether they are in mode of ignorance, mode of passion, mode of goodness, anybody by the costless mercy of God can go. By the costless mercy of Vaishnavas. So Bhagavatam is full of episodes where Narada Muni has come and taken so many people back to Godhead. That means that there is, as far as Achintya Bhedavad is concerned, there is absolute no difference here between those in the mode of ignorance, passion, goodness, because anybody by mercy of God, by touch, a dog, a crow, a parrot, anything can go back to Godhead.
Yeah, but that what you said, doesn't that fit into that too?
It fits.
So then what's wrong?
It fits, but the scope is practically not there in the Thathavada. Scope of those in the mode of ignorance.
Like I'm just
Mm.
someone is a mode of ignorant Tattva philosophy.
Mm.
So then if he comes to the Lord, won't his
Correct, but he won't come. According to Thathavada, they won't come. They will be there in the movie theater. They won't come here. Their attraction won't come.
But then if you go preach to them then?
Yeah, that is, I think somewhere some mix will happen, Prabhu. Somewhere some mix will happen. But for all practical purpose, they are all the Madhvas. They have preached to that erudite community who are already fit to progress. They're not going and saying, okay, this person is, but even there are exceptions. What happened was there was this devotee called Kanakadasa. He was not allowed into the Udupi temple. The Madhva Brahmanas did not allow them into the Udupi temple. And so, but he wanted to see the Lord. Here is an example, Prabhu, because the Tattvavadis did not find them eligible to come and worship the Lord into the temple. But the deity of the Krishna turned 180 degree and a window broke and gave darshan. The deity did not agree with Tattvavadis, right? No matter what the status of that person is, if somebody wants to worship Krishna, Krishna is available for them, right? So in that way, and even now, for us to see the deity of Udupi Krishna, there is a small dwar, small window called as, what is it called? Kanaka Kindi, through which one has to see. It is only, that is the practice. So here is also proof that the deities respond and reciprocate with the devotees.
Thank you, bro.
Thank you, bro. Right. Yes, bro.
Prabhuji, sorry.
The soul, does the nature of soul, like in the previous life, so does it depend on the sampradaya that soul gets into? I mean, like, if somebody gets into not gets into, in the sense like somebody practices Sri Sampradaya, somebody practices Madhva Sampradaya, we are doing goddess. So is that based on some motivation that is based on the past?
So, Prabhu, based on the eternal nature of the soul takes a certain path. And until the final siddhi of Swarupa Siddhi, final form is realized, the soul will go through different things, different processes. Even we can also see that those who have come to ISKCON, they are also, there may be things that they have wandered away, but maybe they will come back after some time. So that free will, that limited free will is always there. No matter what is destined, even though Madhvacharya says that they are all destined to go to hell, but there is still that limited free will to take up Krishna consciousness. That is always there, right? So in that way, the soul can take different paths and different path through it, and that is the beauty of it. So maybe they are so inclined to hearing stories of Sri Lakshmi Devi in one lifetime, but maybe in the next lifetime they might come in contact with somebody else in the Madhurya Rasa with Gauri Vaishnava. Maybe they go this way. That is all totally possible, right? So.
What would be your opinion on the thing that like why are God the Vaishnavites teaching so much, but not other Vaishnavites? They are not focusing on expanding the whole culture of God.
Prabhu, I'll take an exception there. Like Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, they all did intense preaching. Like just as how Shankaracharya saved the India at that time from completely going out of the fold of the Vedas by bringing it from the Buddhist fold, Ramanujacharya did immense work in the amount of temples that he has built and established the temple worship process, the Pancharatra Vidhi and all those temples. And I was even seeing a video yesterday about this town called Srirangapatna in Karnataka, where Ramanujacharya went and took so many of the Vaishnavas there and established that city as a predominant Vaishnava city. So many people have gone to Vaishnavism because of Ramanujacharya. And Madhvacharya, he talked with Persian kings, and had them follow different principles, and they've all done. But over the course of time, people can become rigid. That is the reason why if we hold on to there are two things here. One is, if we hold on, I'm not quoting this directly from me, when I heard this from one of our acharyas in our ISKCON, like if we hold on to very strict practices, entirely traditional practices, without innovating a bit for the preaching purpose to pull people, we will get stuck in that place.
Time, place, circumstance.
Time, place, circumstance, or in other sense, if we keep on changing, then everything will be lost again. So if it is entirely liberal, and we say, okay, you can do whatever you want. You get up at 8 in the morning, that is fine, and then do this. Oh, that's very good. As long as you say Krishna wants, it's fine. And then that is extremely liberal. On the other side, you say that, okay, one slight discrepancy, everything is doomed. In both the things, that is extreme conservativeness. Both the things, the string will break. There has to be some balance. So that is where it happened, I think, that these acharyas, they were all liberal when it was needed. And but they did not compromise on certain things, right? So that compromise, the thing about where to put the balance, that is where, like Prabhupada has done that in so many occasions, right? They were chanting 64 rounds before that, right? But then as Sampradaya Acharya, he made a change there. Otherwise, the movement won't spread this much, right? So, Prabhupada.
That's what I was about. Mercy of Guru, and according to the time,
Mm.
takes up that.
Mm.
So, if he prescribes 16 rounds,
Yeah, very nice. That will stop here, Prabhu.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Engaging and
Hare
very
Krishna.
questions and many strong.
Thank you.
You created such ambience that we asked many questions. That is,
I hope I didn't say anything wrong.
no. I mean, due to this, I got so much pride of our philosophy. Achintya Veda Tattva. And Nityananda Prabhu's mercy. Otherwise, oh my God.
Thank you.
No.
So wait, so you said that Ramanujacharya, the Sri Vaishnavas, what is their main worship? You said again, their way of worshiping is
Their they have all the 9 processes, but predominantly the temple worship and the ritualistic performances have been very predominant. And so Prabhupada himself, for various rituals, he had called the Sri Vaishnavas to do the different sacrifices.
And then what
right?
about these?
Madhvacharya is fire sacrifice. Fire sacrifice, because they take the black ashes every day and put the black light.
And Vallabhacharya?
And we'll take off from the internet and then speak. There is somebody from internet.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Quick question, Prabhuji. Sorry.
You can ask anyone has anything from
Anybody from Zoom?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Can you hear me? One question.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh,